The long way home. I remember the vibration before the light, and how my fingers tightened unconsciously against the restraint straps. The sound rose through the hull, not loud, but deep enough to settle into my ribs, like standing beside a railway track just before a train arrives, the air trembling with energy still held back. We were 30 in all, lined in 2 tiers, bodies encapsulated in couches that fit too precisely to feel like comfort. The launch cradle was white and silver and humming with readiness. Some of us breathed in steady, practiced rhythm. Others inhaled shallowly, as if afraid each breath might mark the last moment of ordinary life. Her name was Starling. Small name, quiet. A name that didn't reach for glory, but hinted at a creature that could find its way across leagues of sky with nothing but instinct and a sense of direction older than language. Captain Rowe's voice carried through the helmets. Not raised, not theatrical, just controlled, the way one speaks when every feeling is contained tightly enough not to shake the hands. Final checks complete. Stand by for ignition. The cradle around us seemed to listen. A stillness settled, the kind that precedes thunder, the drawn breath before a newborn cries, the moment when choices cease and consequences begin. 10 seconds. Chen's eyes found mine across the row. The corners crinkled with a grin, not comic, not light-hearted, but laced with something fierce that came from crossing a threshold without hesitation. Her mouth formed silent words. Too late now, though her gaze added an unspoken, and that's exactly right. 9. 8. Someone behind me was muttering softly in Spanish, not a plea to be spared, but a grounding rhythm they'd grown up hearing in kitchen light and childhood illness and long summer heat. 7. 6. I thought of my sister, Rena, in our old apartment, hair tied back with no care for matching clothes, stirring her coffee with the same spoon she always forgot to wash. She told me the night before launch, "Don't try to be brave, just be yourself. I'll keep the world in one piece until you're back." 5. 4. My throat tightened, not from fear, but from something quieter, something that made breathing feel like carrying too much inside one chest. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. It wasn't a punch, it was a steady hand placed against the sternum, guiding, firm, undeniable. Weight settled in like a memory of earth, grass underfoot, shoes on pavement, body pulled gently downward by familiar forces. Except this downward came from behind, from engines burning steadily, creating a new ground out of thrust. On the external feed, Earth receded, blue curve shrinking with unsettling grace. Clouds dimmed, continents softened into pale shapes, then into watercolor smears. Before the heart could adjust, the planet became a coin suspended in blackness, then a star. Someone sniffed through the comms. Not crying, just startled by how quickly home collapsed into a single point of light. Days passed, acceleration remained, weight became normal again, the kind of normal you stop noticing until it's gone. We ate breakfast as if we hadn't crossed the most profound boundary a human can cross. We walked the exercise loop. We checked systems. We floated, not in body, but in routine. What had been terror in the launch cradle became a schedule taped to a wall. Yet something inside me stayed taut, like a string drawn across a bow but not yet released. When I lay in my bunk during night cycle, the low hum of the engine was a heartbeat not quite my own. If I listened too long, my chest tightened, not with panic, but with a longing I could not name. I spent nights at the observation blister. Out there, the stars were honest. No twinkle, no atmospheric shimmer, just the sharp, piercing stillness of real distance. The sun behind us dimmed faster than expected, not just shrinking, but changing. Its warmth thinned into wavelengths my eyes no longer recognized, and I felt something like farewell settle on my shoulders. One evening, with gloved fingertips resting on the glass, I whispered, not to be heard, but because silence often asks for words. "Don't disappear too fast." I didn't know if I meant the star or Earth or myself. Rena's first packet arrived on day 41. Her face appeared in our childhood kitchen, soft morning glow through cheap curtains, hair messy, oversized sweater hanging loose. She smiled, but there was a tremor at the edge of it, the kind that comes when someone is trying to be steady for another person's sake. "You're really doing it," she said. I looked at the mission tracker. The departure line just goes, like you're stepping off the map and drawing a new one along the way. She breathed in, slowly, and her eyes glistened for a second, though she blinked it away before the camera could catch the full shine. "Come back with pictures of skies no one has seen," she added, quieter. "Please don't forget us while you're out there." I watched twice before responding, then 3 times, not because I missed her, though I did, but because her voice carried a weight she didn't name. That night, my reply came out softer than I intended. "I won't forget. Wherever we go, you're the piece I carry that keeps me pointed home." No tears fell, but there was a tightness behind my sternum that stayed with me through sleep and beyond. Weeks passed. Acceleration continued. The sun dimmed further, fading into a red that cameras tracked long after eyes could not. Ahead of us, Alpha Centauri brightened, not like a rising sun, but like a pinprick sharpening its edge, growing more insistent. We crossed the relativistic threshold. Dr. Moran gathered us gently. "From Earth's perspective," she explained, "our time now stretches. For every year we experience, 2 will pass for them." We sat in stillness. A few eyes darted down, not fearful, but reflective. A timeline had shifted, and though we accepted the logic, deeper parts of us began recalibrating the meaning of return. I thought of Rena aging faster, of birthdays celebrated without me, of seasons turning twice while mine turned once. That night, sleep pressed heavy with a kind of ache that no physical gravity caused. At midpoint, we flipped the ship. Bodies rose briefly into weightlessness. Laughter escaped, not because of joy, but because release can feel like laughter when pressure lifts. Then thrust resumed, and we were falling toward Alpha Centauri. The first sight of harbor came with no fanfare, just an image in the viewport. A blue-green sphere, thin clouds like brushstrokes, 2 suns painting 2 shadows. When I stepped onto its soil, my breath caught, not with shock, but with a fullness that made my chest feel too small. Harbor did not greet us. Harbor did not reject us. Harbor simply existed, complete without witness. The air held metallic brightness, grass analogs bent in soft waves. Seas whispered against unfamiliar sand with rhythms that seemed older than thought. Chen stood beside me once, eyes shining more deeply than before. "It doesn't need us," she murmured. I nodded, and something in me eased. An understanding. Not all discovery requires possession. 4 weeks we walked, quietly, gently, leaving nothing that wind could not erase. The journey back carried more weight than departure ever had. Not gravity, but subtle heaviness behind the sternum, the kind you feel when a long-held note in a song finally resolves. Messages from Earth came slower now. Years slipped through Rena's eyes, laugh lines deepening, voice maturing, hair touched by silver she didn't bother to hide. Once she said, in a voice that trembled only near the end, "It feels like I'm living 2 years for everyone you do." I closed my eyes and let that truth sink in. Not bitter, not wounded, just altered. When Starling returned to Earth, my boots touched gravity that felt denser than thrust had ever been. Air flooded with smells I had forgotten mattered. Grass, rain-soaked pavement, cooking oil from distant markets, human sweat warmed by joy and nerves. Rena waited at the ramp's end. Older, yes, but her eyes held the same spark, even if deepened by experience. She placed her hands on my face and whispered, voice breaking and steadying at once. "You look exactly the same. Exactly." I answered without thinking. "You look exactly like someone who kept us all alive while we were gone." Her tears came then. Not loud, not desperate, just clean, unstoppable release. Mine followed without shame. Now Starling rests in a museum, a quiet silver body under controlled light. Tour guides speak of physics and light speed and milestones. They do not speak of the nights we lay awake listening to the hum and missing the sound of real wind. Sometimes I visit her. I sit beside the hull and let my breathing match the memory of the drive. My palms lay flat against cool metal, and I whisper, not to the ship, but to the journey itself. We returned. We kept the promise. If, as you drift toward sleep, you feel the faintest tug in your chest, as if something is traveling vast distances to reach you, perhaps it is only this: a reminder that distance can be crossed, time can be held gently, and even stars, patient and far, wait for those who move toward them. We came home. We kept the light.
Return from the local bubble. I never imagined the local bubble would feel so empty. It's strange to say that about a region 70,000 times wider than any walkable horizon. But emptiness doesn't measure in kilometers. It measures in the quiet between heartbeats, in the stretch of years that run faster for everyone except you. Our ship was not Starling, not Veil Runner. This time we boarded Odyssey Grey. Steel grey hull, matte like wet stone. Windows slit thin. Drive arrays nested like wings folded in meditation. She was built not for spectacle, but for distance. For the kind of travel where time becomes not a companion, but a cost. Our destination was not a star, not a planet, not even a filament, just the edge of the local bubble. 300 light years across, a cavity of hot, thin gas, carved long ago by supernovae. A wound in galactic air, a clearing in the long forest of the Milky Way. Outbound acceleration was the same, 1G, steady, comfortable, deceitfully familiar. Meals, shifts, sleep cycles, exercise. Odyssey Grey made routine out of impossible velocity. 3 weeks in, the solar system receded behind us, like a childhood street disappearing through train windows. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, gone to memory. Sun, a star among stars, then a red ghost, then nothing the eye could catch. By month 12, ship time, our Lorentz factor passed 2. Month 18, it passed 5. Then it kept climbing. Every time it did, Earth stretched farther and faster away on its own spinning timeline. News came compressed into seasons, then decades. Voices aged between messages. I remembered the first one that startled me, not in content, but in tone. It was from my brother, Davy. He stood on a veranda older than I remembered him owning. His beard was streaked silver. His voice was deepened not by sorrow, but by time, discreet, unannounced. "Your goddaughter is 12, he said with a soft smile, as if easing the words into me. "She paints the night sky now. Says she wants to learn the constellations you see. Says she'll wait." I paused the recording there, not because I couldn't continue, but because I could hear the years in his lungs. When we resumed playback, he laughed lightly. "I've told her waiting is measured differently for you." I sent my reply that same evening. To me, 18 months had passed. To him, a decade. Outward, the constellations ahead funneled tighter than they did at the Veil. At 95% light speed, stars became threads, not dots. They clustered toward our bow, stretched and warped by aberration, until the galaxy did not look like a disk, but a corridor. A corridor we were falling down. There was nothing dramatic in the shift. No rip, no flash, no lurch. Just the increasing sense that space had opinions about which direction we should face. And we faced forward. Always forward. Past 2 years ship time, halfway distance, we flipped. Not for comfort, no crew likes the inversion, but for braking. The inertial silence of mid-rotation was the only moment weightlessness visited us. Half a minute of suspension, limbs afloat, hearts too. Then gravity returned, gentle but absolute. Peak velocity came and went. Odyssey grey decelerated into the empty swell of the bubble's far interior. It's difficult to articulate what the bubble felt like. It's not filled, not structured, not rich with nebulae you can reach out and almost touch. It's the absence of those things. The aftermath of stars that exploded before humans drew breath, before Earth cooled, before we had language to tell each other we were alive. Sensors read less gas, less dust, less interference, as if space itself took a breath billions of years ago and never exhaled. We spent 5 months ship time at the edge, not because there was work to do, no samples worth the risk, no minerals to harvest, but because arriving at the boundary of home felt like reaching a shoreline made of midnight. I used to stand at the forward observation aperture, a slit window no wider than my palm, and watch the void. Nothing moved, and yet there was motion in the way the universe held itself still. I recorded a log, not for command, but for myself. Every direction looks like the absence of direction. Not menacing, not comforting, just honest. There was a softness in that honesty, a quiet that did not need to justify its existence. On day 865 ship time, we turned back. 865 days for us, 600 years for Earth. I cannot narrate the return without slowing my breath, even now. Deceleration back toward the sun's neighborhood changed nothing physically, yet everything in me began to anticipate the weight of centuries. Messages arrived infrequently now, not for a lack of transmission, but because language had moved past us. Our software translated imperfectly. Words no longer aligned with meanings. Cities had fallen. Cities had risen. Empires ended. Democracies reinvented. Artificial minds helped govern, then stepped down, then vanished into networks with no borders. No one spoke of nation-states anymore. People belonged to sky regions and cultural clusters. Children learned stars the way we once learned continents. Davi's voice reached me once more, written, not spoken. Not because he was too old to speak, but because speaking had become archaic. His handwriting trembled slightly on screen. "I am almost finished," he wrote. "It has been a good life. Tell her, tell my granddaughter, you once chased the horizon and touched where our sky ends. She will understand." I stared at the message long enough that the synthetic lights dimmed for sleep, then brightened again. He died 3 months before we docked. 3 months Earth time, which meant nothing on our clocks. Odyssey Grey entered Sol not to celebration, but ceremony. We were relics, not honoured ones, simply artefacts from a slower page of the same book. Once a young archivist approached me with wide eyes, curious, not reverent. "What was it like?" she asked. "Out at the edge of the bubble?" I answered as truthfully as I could, using words that now belonged to a different linguistic era. It felt like listening to a room before anyone arrives, not waiting, just existing, where everything that will someday be born is still quiet. She didn't speak, but she nodded. Her eyes understood more than translation algorithms ever could. Later, at dusk, Sol's light filtered through 6 centuries of atmospheric change. I walked the shoreline of a sea whose name I didn't recognize. The air tasted different, not poisoned, just evolved. Architecture curved where once it angled. People moved with softened haste, as though 600 years had taught them the futility of running too fast. A child ran past me, a sound unchanged by centuries, unchanged by dilation, unchanged by cosmic breath. And something inside me eased. We had not returned to the world we left. We had returned to the one that grew in our absence. This is the true cost of relativity. Not lost years, but the acceptance that time does not wait for travellers. Nor should it. When I lay in my bunk that night aboard Odyssey Grey, the ship now anchored on a world older than my memory, I whispered a single thought into the hull. We made it back. Not to what was, but to what became.
Before the forgetting. We thought departure was the beginning. It wasn't. The beginning came later, quiet, unremarkable, in a low-lit comms bay when Earth's voice simply thinned. Not vanished, just stretched, like a thread pulled through too many fingers. At 5 years ship time, our velocity reached 94% light speed. We still laughed then, still held poker nights, still complained about rations and recycled air. Earth's messages arrived every month, delayed but coherent. Birth announcements, political disputes, oceans rising, oceans falling, arguments over sky rights and satellite traffic. It all felt comfortingly petty. At 8 years, the Milky Way changed shape in the viewport, arms bending, warping, drawn into a forward cone. The galaxy no longer looked like where we came from. It looked like where light went to die. Earth's messages shifted. Fewer jokes, more warnings, migration inland, saltwater farms, glaciers calving. No panic, just the soft monotony of species survival. At 12 years, we approached the first marker of the outer mid-disk boundary, the region where stars grow so sparsely spaced that their light stops overlapping. You cannot understand loneliness until you see space with no granularity, just isolated suns, each so defensively distant they feel ashamed to be seen. The comm signal delay had thickened to 2 years each way. A greeting took 4 years to complete. We stopped greeting. Not because we gave up, but because language felt wasteful in such distance. At 15 years, a message arrived with no voice, no video, just text. Unknown structures located beneath Antarctic shelf, unable to identify architecture, seems pre-human or non-human. None of us spoke for an hour. Then another ping, 2 years later by light. Contact lost with 14 research sites. No elaboration, no casualty list, just silence embedded in transmission. Captain Heron locked that archive under Mission Psychological Stability Protocol. We played cards again that night. No one mentioned Antarctica. At 19 years, the galaxy thinned further. We crossed the rim precursor zone, the place where dark matter scaffolding outweighs baryonic matter, where gravity feels like suggestion rather than law. It is not empty, it is withdrawn. Light arrived late, bent, redshifted, quieter than it should be. Sura said it felt like entering a cathedral after the congregation has gone, not abandoned, but breath held. Comm delay? 6 years. A hello would arrive 12 years after it was spoken. Earth replied less now, short pulses, compressed updates, no more news about sports or weather, just the utilitarian voice of a species trying to remain in conversation with something moving beyond its memory. At 23 years, relativity became visible. Lorentz factor climbed past 600. Stars ahead sharpened, blue shifted to brilliant knives of color. Behind us, the Milky Way dimmed red and fell away into a rusted ring. The sun was no longer yellow. It was a memory of yellow. Earth sent one more packet. The timestamp marked 80,000 years planetary time. For us, 2 decades. For them, 20 successive civilizations, if any survived at all. The message contained nothing but coordinates, a single string of numbers referencing a location in the Indian Ocean Trench. No text, no voice, just those numbers. We sent acknowledgement. It would reach them 12 years after delivery, if there was a them. At 25 years, comms died. Not abruptly, softly, kindly, like a friend choosing to sleep rather than say goodbye. Green lights blinked amber, then red, then flat. We assumed equipment failure. We ran diagnostics. We checked arrays, lasers, receivers, cryogenic backups. Nothing was broken. Space had simply become too wide for words. The galaxy ahead looked like a wound, gold and violet tearing into black. Sura, it's still beautiful. I wanted to believe her, but beauty requires witness. Out there, witness was not a category anymore. At 29 years, we crossed the true rim. Stars gave way to geometry, dark matter scaffolding, invisible yet gravitationally articulate. Constellations dissolved. Starlight no longer formed patterns. It resisted interpretation. Time dilation hit hard then, not in clocks, but in bones. Memories from Earth felt prehistoric. Birthdays, funerals, love, cities, sky, all artifacts in our blood, too old to categorize. We slept in shifts, not for necessity, for sanity. Silence that deep can unspool identity if you face it continuously. At 31 years ship time, we began deceleration. Turn-burn inverted gravity for 30 seconds. Our bodies lifted, hearts stuttered, organs buoyant. In that breathless moment, we understood. We would return as myth, not family. Humanity would not greet us. Humanity would measure us. Deceleration carved our bodies down, years accumulating slower than stars receded. Messages never returned, not because Earth died, but because our conversations ceased to matter to each other. Clocks kept perfect relativistic count, but meaning didn't. At 41 years, we fell back through the arms. The Milky Way blossomed again, not tunnel but wheel, luminous and indifferent. Humanity waited, but not as we left it. They were alive, they were flesh, they were us, undone. Memory had eroded faster than evolution. They did not build, did not speak, did not remember. But they lived, in hunger, in instinct, in clan and fire and tooth. We returned with data, with theory, with cosmic horizon calculations. They returned our gaze with blank recognition, like children meeting ancestors in nightmares. We came home as astronauts. We were received as prey. Now, in orbit above the world that made us, we record final outward truth before descent. The edge of the Milky Way did not break us. It simply made Earth too far away to stay itself. Distance did not destroy civilization. Time did not collapse humanity. Separation unthreaded memory. When we lost Earth's voice out there, Earth began losing its own voice down here. If you hear this transmission, know the timeline. 41 years for us, 100,000 for them. We did not outlive humanity. Humanity outgrew recall. Tomorrow we land again, not as explorers, not as saviors, but as descendants returning to a parent who no longer remembers our name, only our flavor.
The horizon that forgets back. No coordinates, no charts, no promise of return. We crossed the last boundary of relevance long before we admitted it. A line not drawn by navigation, but by cosmology. The round-trip limit at 8.3 billion light-years. Beyond that, even light cannot make the round-trip home. Beyond that, space does not just expand, it wins. We accelerated anyway, because we were built to see how far meaning travels before it dissolves. The final message from Earth arrived when ship time marked year 88. For us, quiet middle age. For Earth, 3 million years extinguished. The message was a child's voice, a recording, an archive, not a greeting. Don't forget to come home. Static swallowed the rest. No context, no civilization. Just a child whose bones had been dust for epochs before our grandparents were born. We stopped responding then, not from despair, from irrelevance. Past the point of no return, conversation has no mechanical definition. Reciprocity is no longer possible. Time dilation becomes so savage that clocks split into different universes of meaning. At year 101, the cosmic microwave background shifted. Not color, intent. A forward halo, ringed, compressed into a singular beam ahead. The leftover radiation from the Big Bang, light older than galaxies, was no longer behind us, but in front of us. Red shifted to blue, blue to violet, violet to something beyond sensory registration. Time was not moving faster. It was changing direction. The ship logged CMB aberration total, temporal vector asymmetrical, which is a clinical way to record. We broke the universe's ability to describe itself. Year 132, ship time. Velocity, practically the speed of light. Lorentz factor, meaningless. Not because it maxed out, but because mathematics stopped being an accurate language for scale. Forward stars collapsed into a tunnel so narrow it no longer resembled space. It resembled an event. Behind us, galaxies stretched, elongated, torn like paint, dragged across black canvas. Clusters fell away first, then filaments, then superclusters, then everything. No structures remained part of our causal horizon. Our screens displayed visible universe, null, not empty, not dark, null. A category error, year 147. Sura died, not of age, not of malfunction, of recognition. She understood before any of us that beyond this horizon we were no longer travelers. We were unreferenced objects, things without origin, without destination, without witness. She sat in observation, staring into the tunnel of converged starlight, and whispered, "We are the artifact now." Then she closed her eyes and slipped away, as if she had finally located the boundary where identity no longer needed to persist. We held a ceremony without ritual. Ritual requires history. We released her into space that no longer had coordinates. Her body drifted not away, but out, like ink in water, like a story forgotten mid-sentence. No tradition, no tomb, just dissolution. Year 162. The tunnel vanished. There was no ahead, no behind, no gradient. Light still existed, but not directionally. It glowed omnipresent, uniform, absolute. We had outrun perspective. No shadows, no implication of source, no contrast to imply the passage of time. And then, time stopped being measurable. Not metaphorically. Clocks kept counting, but nothing changed. Entropy froze. CMB background stabilized at a constant temperature across all detection. No expansion visible, no motion, no fluctuation. It was not heat death. It was memory death. A universe no longer dynamic, no longer cooling, no longer evolving. A universe finished. Year 173. I cannot confirm the year. Numbers persist, but meaning does not. I think of Earth sometimes. Not the Earth we left, but the one we caused by leaving. A species cracked by time dilation. Memory staggered. Language diluted. Return was impossible long before distance made it so. Return requires recognition. We forfeited that. I write this final record not for discovery. No ship will arrive here. Not for transmission. No signal can outrun expansion. I write because thought without expression becomes nightmare. Here, in a universe beyond travel, beyond cause, beyond clocks, beyond observers, we are not forgotten. We are unrememberable. Somewhere, impossibly far and irretrievably early, galaxies still dance in their first billion years. Stars still ignite. Planets still seed oceans with carbon, lightning, and accident. Somewhere, humanity is still learning fire. But not here. Here, there is only the end of relation. A place where space no longer stretches because there is nothing left to stretch between. No light to chase. No horizon to cross. No home to return to. No other. Only us. And soon, not even that. In this motionless eternity, I finally understand why the universe accelerates. Not to flee us, not to hide from us, but because to remain still is to acknowledge itself, and nothing infinite can bear self-knowledge. When I close my eyes now, I do not see stars, or earth, or the tunnel of light. I see only a calm, vast, complete absence, not terrifying, not sorrowful, just final. If there is any last truth to speak, let it be this: we did not go too far. We simply went to the only place left after distance stops being a number, where existence forgets it ever began.